What is good, God's Vibes? We have a special guest with us today. It is Brittany. Welcome, Brittany, to God's Vibes.
Thank you for having me today.
You're welcome. It's so good to have you here. Who are you, Brittany? Tell the folks who you are.
So I am Brittany Griffith. I actually live in North Carolina. I have 3 kids and a husband that I've been married to for 11 years. Um, so we have about 6 dogs that we have. Um, yes, if it weren't for my kids, I probably would not have the dogs,
Are
but
they inside or outside?
they are all outside
Okay.
dogs. Yeah,
I'm like, that
they
would be
are.
an adventure.
Because I could not handle them inside.
No.
So 3 kids are enough inside and a husband. So that's
Yes.
good.
So
Yeah,
funny. I love it. Are you born and raised in North Carolina?
I am. Yes, I'm out of Davie County.
Okay.
It's in between Charlotte and Raleigh.
Awesome.
I'm about 4 hours from the beach and about 4 hours from the mountain. So kind of in
Yay.
between.
I recently was in Charlotte in May and it was gorgeous. I love like their little downtown area and they have so many fun beaches out there too. It's fun.
It's very pretty out here.
It's so beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us too a little bit about your God journey. I'm curious to hear, were you raised with God? Have you always known God? What has that journey been like?
Yeah, so I was actually born and raised in church. I've been in church all my entire life, as an infant to now.
Okay.
And My home church is Liberty Baptist Church out of Moxville.
Okay.
Um, and that's where I actually got baptized and I got saved at the age of 7.
Wow.
Um, and It's definitely been a journey. Being able to grow up in the atmosphere of the presence of God, and knowing that I had a family home that was
Mm.
surrounded by the presence of God. And it definitely makes a difference in the day and time that we live, to be able to live in that environment. So yeah,
Like
it's
knowing God from 7, right? Like how did you know God then? And like how has that journey evolved to know him? Like I can't even necessarily relate, right? Like I was raised Catholic, so I didn't even know you could encounter the presence of God or talk to God, have relationships. I'm just curious at 7 what that's like to actually do life with God.
yeah. So when I was young, I we went to church all the time. Sunday nights, Sunday mornings. We went a lot on Wednesday nights. We were very avid in church. And the preacher that was there at the church at the time that we got saved was Pastor Blackburn. And he was just the sweetest man ever. He actually taught the Bible to where you could really understand it as a child. And whether you were an adult or a child, you could understand it. And he was just an absolute godsend to our family, in just different times. But the thing with, I guess, being raised and in the church at a young age was, you know, I don't really know how to describe it as other than, it was just one of those things where you you live in the atmosphere of it, and it's just one of the that's a really hard one to describe, Juliana,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I've been raised in church all my entire life, and there wasn't many days that we missed. And just being able to go to church and being able to learn the word was just good for me.
Yeah.
And being able to have the surroundings that I had as a young child with that, and the parents that pushed us to go to church and be in the church, and um, you know, it's just it was just amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I think it's for some, there's this misconception maybe that when you do life with God, life just gets easier. And I have found that that's not necessarily the case. Like in a lot of ways, it gets fierier, right? Like you get literally challenged and tested in so many more ways. It's like the enemy has a target on you, and life is challenging, right? But you're just not doing it alone. So I'm curious how life has evolved and how you've really grown with God. What does that look like since 7 to where you are now?
So it's been very different. I will tell you, the journey that I have been on with God has been very, very different. Um, and to most, it would probably be like, well, that's normal. But to me, it was something that was very hard for me to overcome and things like that. Um, because at a young age, yes, I got saved, I was baptized, but as I got older into my teen years, I felt this almost like a resentment from God. And it's like I took myself out of the church life, and I had a really hard time going. I had a really bad round of depression, and my anxiety was just really skyrocketing. And every time I walked in the church, I
Yeah.
got very sick.
Um,
Um,
and this is
I
around what age? What age was that happening?
That was around, I don't know, 15, 16.
Okay.
Um, Somewhere around in there. And that has again increased as an adult,
Yeah.
which it has made it really hard, even as an adult, to keep your children. My biggest thing was to keep my children in church, like I did when I grew up, to know God. And, they go to a Christian school now. And so they are active in the church life. But it's not the same unless you go every day.
Yeah.
When you stick in there and you go when the doors open, things like that. And that's just the way I was raised. When the doors were open, you went to church. And then I kind of got out of that as I was growing up, because I just something pushed me away. And as I've grown into like now as an adult, I had a really hard time going
Mhm.
up until I actually started the mastermind with you, Juliana.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so,
This is
so yeah,
crazy. Like, so I didn't even know this part about like how that shifted your whole relationship with God. So tell
yeah.
folks about how maybe how you found me and how you got plugged into the God's Vibes Mastermind, like what you were craving, what you were praying for, what you were fighting, and then how God brought this as an answer. Because I think it's so interesting. A lot of times we don't realize how things are divinely orchestrated in our life. We're literally praying things and God is answering, right? Like he literally brings
Right.
answers to our prayers. And sometimes we just think that's coincidence and we're like, oh, okay. Or sometimes we ignore it. But when you get it, it becomes so significant. You just feel overjoyed that God cares literally about every single detail of your life. So tell the folks what was happening before you found the mastermind and got plugged in over here. Like what were you wrestling with and what did God do?
Yeah, so you're giving me cold chills right now. So,
God's doing that. Those are
giving me
God
cold
bumps.
chills. Yeah. So what actually led me into into the mastermind, was I was having a really, really hard time in life. I'm just going to be quite honest with you. I was having a very hard time in life. I felt like I was losing everything that I had. All my relationships were being lost. There was things that, you know, I had gotten bad news that my mom had cancer. And then, she had went through surgery to cure her cancer. And thank goodness and thank God for that it, took it, the surgery helped. And she actually just had a visit this past week and everything was still good. So that is,
Yes.
good news
Glory to
there.
God. Come on.
Um, yeah, and then my my stepfather, I call him my my bio dad, but um, he had passed away in December,
Mhm.
the same year that we found out that my mom had cancer.
Man.
So we had I had a really, really hard time and adjustment there. And so um, after that, it kind of spiraled into several more relationships issues because um, I just felt like there was a lot of relationships that was lost in that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not just, my stepfather, but my biological father as well. And there's things that, you want to mend, but, sometimes it's just not meant to mend.
Yeah.
And so I went through this period of rejection from everyone.
Mm.
Like I felt rejection from God because of the way things were going, and things just hit me really hard. And I was just, one day I had just got on the computer and I was like, I just want to change my whole entire Facebook, like everything around it, everything in my Instagram, go through, and I wanted to delete people that I just didn't talk to, that just didn't serve a purpose in my life. Um, Kind of reconstructing everything that I was doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so whenever I was on there and I started going through things, and I was like, I really need to find someone that can help me, because I went through 8 years of therapy.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say it didn't work, because it did to extents. That therapy really did help me. I would not be sitting here today in this chair, I'm sure,
Yeah.
without that eight years of therapy.
Yeah.
But on the other side, I felt that the therapy wasn't the right option to go back into.
Yeah.
And so it needed something different.
Yeah.
And so for me to be able to find the difference in what I was looking for, and in my mind, it was spiritual growth with God, because I had been missing that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so I went in and I just started researching things. And actually, your name was the first one that popped up on my screen.
Woohoo.
So, yes. And so
Okay.
going through, and there's been lots of people that had messaged me like prior to that, for just different things in coaching, and it was just not what I wanted,
Yeah.
just to be honest. And so I was like, I'm not going to just dive into something that I don't know that I'm ready for, or that I feel like is what I needed
Yeah.
at that time, because I was really, really struggling. My marriage had been falling apart. My kids were just very down all the time, and it was just one of those things where I was like, at this point in my life, I'm the one that's going to hold everyone together.
Mhm.
So I was trying to figure out, how could I help myself? And I know that probably sounds harsh, but sometimes
No.
you gotta sometimes you gotta come back home, and you gotta understand that, you are that home. All the people that lives in your home is your home, not the
Yes.
outside of the walls.
Come
And
on.
so I had to bring it back home, and I had to start working on myself. And that's whenever I found, really honestly, had found, you. And so it was just one of
Yeah.
those things that kind of walked into play. I had started watching some of your stuff for about a month or so, and
Online.
then yep,
Okay.
and then yep.
We call that stalking. No. No, you gotta feel
Yes.
people out and make sure they're your people,
Well,
or that God's leading you to them. But
it's just one of those things, because I don't know. I'm a person that I cannot just stick my finger in and say, okay, let's
sure.
go. I cannot do that.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to fully understand the person that I'm working with if I'm going to be working with them. And so, and your voice just in general just like touched me.
Oh.
It's just the way you talked, your presence, the way you carried yourself, it was something that just led me to you in that direction. And so I was like, this is it. Like, Brittany, why do not turn around? This is it. This is where you needed to go. And so
Yeah.
I signed up for
You
the
initially
courage
get
code.
into Courage Co. Okay. So you first
Yep.
plugged into Courage Co. and your intention
That's
was just
just
probably to feel it out, or what happened there?
Yeah, so I got into Courage Co. And then um, I think I was in it for just a little bit of time before I had actually signed on to the Mastermind.
Uh-huh.
Um, and the Courage Co. community, just in general, is just an all around amazing, amazing community. I mean, the the lectures that you hear from everyone personally, like just their personal stories, what they're going through, it actually touches you in a way that, again, I got cold chills. Like, it just
Yes.
gives me that it's just one of those things where you can be helped by their stories as well. And so it was just really touching to me,
So
in
those
that
are probably
aspect.
the small groups. Is that what you're mentioning?
Yeah, I had went into a couple of the small groups several times, and just being able to do the Friday Fire was really nice.
Yeah.
I had That was the first one I think that I had went into,
Uh-huh.
um, with Shelby,
Yes.
and absolutely amazing, absolutely
Yes.
amazing. Um, and so I think I had finally got into the one that was it Mondays or Tuesdays?
There's
I
one
can't
on
remember.
Tuesday that's good for your
Tuesdays.
soul sisters.
Good for Your Soul Sisters. That's right. And
Uh-huh.
so I had went into that group, and Jamie was just amazing. I have to say that she really touched my heart. She really did.
Come on.
Which, and I have to say that everybody in these groups that are running these groups in Courage Crow
Yes.
is just a blessing to everyone, because
Amen.
it's hard to put yourself in a situation or a place to teach someone, and
Yeah.
then you're going through the struggles yourself.
Yes.
So, like, I applaud those ladies for doing the things that they do and showing up for Courage Co the way they do,
Yes.
along with you showing up, Juliana, to be able to teach us what we need to do in the path of God.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been very
I love.
heart-wrenching.
You kind of you kind of ease your way in, but not really. You had like an accelerated like plunge.
I
you do
did.
you do these small groups, right? So people know we have small groups on Tuesday, which is good for your soul sisters. We have one Wednesday night called Biblical Breakthrough, and this is literally what it sounds like. It's anyone that really has a hurt, habit, or a hang up. That's everybody. And they come in, they go deep immediately, right? With truth, with prayer, with so many things. Then we have Friday Fire, which is more of an activating group. And then we have prayer calls, and this is just free to the community in general. So the community can build so people can connect so that you don't have to be alone in whatever you're facing now. Like, there's probably not one person that's not in a trial or suffering in some kind of way, if they're honest. And so these are groups that you can plug into immediately. And then you got plugged into, did you plug into the monthly trainings, the masterclass bundle, or did you go right into the mastermind? Did you get both when
Um,
you go into the
so
mastermind?
so I went right into the mastermind.
Okay. So you got
Um,
launched into the mastermind with the bonus of the Courage Co Masterclass bundle. So not only do you get the mastermind, but you get every monthly training.
yes.
Okay. So what
Yeah,
happened when you went
because for
yeah.
me it was like a one and for all. I
Yeah.
was at the point in my life where I was like, I knew this was where I needed to be. I had been praying for it for so long, um asking God to lead me in the direction that I needed to go,
Yeah.
honestly. And like I said, and then you popped up and on my screen, and I watched you for a little bit, and then I got plugged into all the different things. And then, the prayer calls are just absolutely amazing. You can learn so much from those prayer calls.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just, just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Um, but the mastermind has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
um Being able to just communicate and learn, and you know learn how, the connection that I have gotten from God has just been very different,
Mm.
since I joined the mastermind in general, in a general aspect, because I almost felt, very rebellious at one point in my life. And then I had that resentment toward God, like he wasn't helping me where I needed to go and all the things. And then all of a sudden it was just like, Brittany, open your eyes and see,
Come on.
like, where are you and what are you doing?
Yeah.
And so it was like, Brittany, you're not where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I knew I wasn't where I was supposed to be, but
Mhm.
where was I supposed to be?
Mm.
And so, um, I have been praying for several years,
Yeah.
about where I was supposed to be at in my life. And, you know, being able to be in the mastermind and the coaching calls and, just the group in general is just astonishing to me. And the way God moves in there is, there's just no words. I honestly, I'm to the point now I have no words. Like, it's just
Yeah.
one of those things you have to experience.
Mhm.
But you have to know that you're in the right place at the right time, and knowing that God is going to put you in that place.
Mm.
He's never going to be early. He's never going to be late, but he's always going to be right on time.
Yeah, he's an on-time God. So good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, like I've been getting God bumps the whole time, girl. Like you're preaching over here. I think I think for folks that are on the outside, sometimes it's hard to understand like what you're saying until you get in and actually start experiencing things firsthand for yourself. And I'm a big proponent of, if you are being led, get in the room. Like get in the room. Like you just have to get in there and let God start working, because everything is prophetic, from the title of a training to what God is doing on a call. Like he is moving. This is like the word. It's alive and active in there. It's not just like a flat type of a course or a program. Like this is something that is very active. The group coaching is the entire year when you get into the mastermind, and you have content that you can go back to. You can actually go through it 4 times in 1 year because it's designed to be 3 months. So basically every quarter you can keep going through this content and still get coaching on it. So maybe what you missed the first round, you didn't really miss. God brought you to what you needed in the first round, then he keeps bringing you to more and more information. So some people, they really wanted to do a deep dive in how they're wired and how they can be an instrument in God's hand. And they want to learn more about their gifts and how God sees them and all of that. They really want to dive there. Some people really want to steward their influence in a really proactive way so they can spend a lot of time in that section. Or maybe they just want to partner with God for the first time in their life because they've been so controlling. Right. And really tried to just play God in their life, that they're wanting to step back a little bit and surrender and yield to God and watch how that starts changing their life. But breakthroughs and testimonies happen every single time. So I'm just curious, you went from this place of feeling depressed, of having your health flare up, of having struggles in your marriage, of having your kids kind of go haywire, and having your home just shake, right? And knowing too that therapy wasn't enough. So you go from there to the mastermind in this community. Like what literally starts happening? What does God start doing? What are some of the breakthroughs of the testimonies that you started personally experiencing?
So, if I had to first say, my first big, huge breakthrough was being able to understand the Bible. If
Yes.
if that were to be something that I would say, that would be my biggest one yet. Because I had, like I said, I had lost connection, with what I felt like I had lost connection with God. And then I got back into the masterminds, and and I really got active in that. And I'll say that I have slacked some. I have. It's not, you're not always going to be perfect in what you're doing,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you're pushing forward to what you want.
Mhm.
Um, and so um, that is like one of the biggest things that I could honestly say from joining the mastermind, is knowing actually what the Bible says.
Yeah.
Because there was a point in my life where I'm like, I'm I'm reading the Bible, but I'm not understanding it.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden it hit me when I joined this group, and the way you teach and the way that you have put it out there in more of the prophetic way is been unbelievable to me. It's just one of the things that, I can open the Bible now and I'm like, oh, I know what that means. Like, I know what that says.
So good.
And yeah, so it's been very touching. And I know some of these things that you don't know because we haven't talked about some of these things, but
Uh-huh.
I there's things on the back end of me that I don't really talk about because and I'm learning that you need to talk about them.
Yeah.
And so there's like I said, there's parts of things that I just kind of leave to the side, and I'm like, it'll come when it's time.
Uh-huh.
But being able to learn the Bible was the biggest one for me. And another big one for me is breaking through to be able to possibly and having my own coaching business.
Yes.
That has been my second biggest one yet. And I only put reading the Bible first because I feel like that was very important
Huge.
to be able to coach a business
Huge.
in the life coaching industry. And
Yeah.
being able to go through everyday life and not really know what you want to do
Yeah.
is really hard. I've been praying for several years that God would lead me where I needed to go. And, when He led me to you, and then it was like, oh, wait, there's coaching involved in this too that you could do. And I was like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
And I still question. I'm like, how did I get here? Why did God bring me here? And so it's just one of those things that's like, when you're in the right place.
That's it.
And so, there's been a lot of sleepless nights lately. I've had quite a few of those around the clock. Just thinking about, different things and how I would want my business to start up, and things like that in the coaching world. But yeah, so.
You've had some beautiful testimonies that you've shared with me too, and I'll allow you to speak to them, but I'm just gonna sort of like put them in your remembrance here. One of them was the shift between having experienced therapy and then experiencing coaching. And I want you to put words to that because I feel like that's really powerful to hear because I'm somebody, again, this isn't therapy has its place and its power, and so does coaching as well. And I experienced both of them, right? For
Right.
years as well. So I'm just curious when you put terms to that, because that radically shifted almost immediately for you. I would say it was probably within like the first two calls, something really shifted for you there. I think also you had such beautiful changes in your health and also just your like general presence shifted, right? Almost from being like a people pleaser to super overwhelmed, stressed out, anxious, and like that was gone. Like you just don't live your life from this place of overwhelm and anxiety anymore. Like even now, I experience a really different version of you. You're just calm, you're centered, you're poised, you're powerful, but that was not what was happening. There was a lot of concern over what people were thinking about what you were going to do in the world. There was a lot of weight and that like lifted. So I'm curious about that as well. And then this beautiful inspiration and expectancy about the future. I think as you've been talking and sharing so far, that's one of the things that I notice is on you. There is this expectancy and God is showing up when you have that. Like God meets you at your expectancy every time. Like he truly does. And I think that that's something that you walk in. You're like, okay, God, like I'm willing. Like I don't know why you led me here, maybe. I don't know what's going to come from this, but I know that you led me here and I'm just expecting you to show up. And he just keeps doing it. So tell us about the shift from therapy to coaching and then also how you just shifted as a human. Like you became a different kind of home.
Right. So yes, there was a lot involved.
Yeah. And this is a short
So
period of time for people that are listening. This is not like
this was
years in the
just in
making.
like, if I could give you a scale, it was literally from maybe 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a very, very short time and a very, very fast paced.
Yeah.
Something I was not expecting at all. But to go back to your first question, was how it came from therapy to coaching.
Yeah.
Um, so, like I said, therapy I went through for 8 years. And it really did help me. But the transition from just a normal psychological evaluation of therapy to a God given presence with the divine power of your coaching was so different. So the leading from the two was, I feel the biggest thing was I feel like God was missing. There was just a very big shift from having a therapy view of things where it was just mainly more talking about how you think, how you do, how you perceive yourself, your self awareness, to how do you present yourself toward God? And how does God see you versus what you see in yourself?
Ooh,
So I took a huge turn there. Again, cold chills. I gotta
I
shake it out
know.
for a minute. I had to shake it out, but it
Same
was just
girl.
it was one of those things. I mean, it was just a huge, huge, huge shift for me. And literally, I say it was so quick and so fast that, you know, you live in a life that you've always not known what you wanted.
Yeah.
And then you go from a life to that, that life I was living in depression, I was living in massive anxiety, like around the clock. Like I actually had to have medications, and um, I actually had an allergic reaction to some allergy shots that I was having. My health just went very, very, very downhill. And so I had been seeing lots of doctors, some very high top doctors here, just to try to help me out and get me where I needed to be. And the last thing that I wanted to hear was, Brittany, your immune system is just like a cancer patient that's had cancer for years. So that was one of the last things that I wanted to hear. And so they gave me the ultimatum. I go, route one, and I work on my health, and I take the path that they've given me to try,
Yep.
or I stay on path B and I do nothing and just see where it takes me.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the ultimatum that I was given. And so I had found a program that they had offered me, along with some other products too, to kind of help with my levels. And I started on that program. I've had a little few hiccups along the way,
Yeah.
and I had to come off, and then was able to go back on. But that really helped my health. And I think too, when you're in a really bad health standard, you're not going to be in the presence of God.
Mhm.
You really have to make your like I said, I think in this day and time you have to take it back home.
Yeah.
You have to take it back home. You have to take it back to where it actually originally starts, which is in your home. And so I had to start focusing on myself instead of everybody else around me. Started focusing more on my health, my journey, with that. And then I picked up my journey with God again, along with that. And it's just led me here. I mean, like I said, it's all been given to me by God. I I would have never been here if it wasn't for that. And I've literally prayed for years to lead me where I need to go in my life, and a career to what I feel like God should want me to do.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah,
I mean, and these are significant changes, right? Like, think about this. It's so easy to express to somebody that maybe hasn't personally experienced it and just be like, wow, that's pretty awesome. But like, literally, though, if you actually slow it down, think about suffering for however many years of your life, and suddenly that's gone. Like, the same things that you wrestled with every day are not what you wrestle with anymore. And what's starting to happen for you is you're starting to feel more free. You're starting to be excited about your future. Like, your home is starting to calm down. Your relationship is getting stronger. People are starting to ask you, like, what's happening, girl? Like, what have you been doing? Like, what, what is going on with you? Like, why are you so chill? Like, what is going on? Like, what are you on, basically, right? And this is not normal. It's supernatural, which is normal with God, though, right? Like, you can access this next level in God, this new level in God, and that can become your life. And it's so, so powerful. So, what happened in the mastermind that made you decide to also want to start coaching together too? Because that also was presented, and you're like, yes, I need that also, right? Like, how did you decide to add coaching to your mix?
yeah. So very interesting. Um, it's something honestly that I've always wanted to do.
Okay. Love.
And just truth be known, I've had my husband's friends tell me that I was Dr. Field,
I
like
love.
growing up. So, like, when you go into it, so it's like the funny parts of the stories that I've heard, and it's like I've helped so many people along the way. So, I have actually done several side businesses where I've actually helped women and transitions in their life, in their home, and being able to know that actually God has called you to do something is different than just saying, "Oh, I want to do this. This is what I want to do."
Say that again for the people in the
So,
back.
yeah,
That is so good. Knowing that God wants you to do something versus you just want to do it.
yep.
Oh, okay, continue. That was so
Yes,
different.
it's true.
Yeah,
Um, it's very true, and it comes with the calling, I think, of knowing that whenever you are in a season of changes, because honestly, my life has been full of seasons. My life has been full of changes.
yeah.
It's just consistently changing, and day by day, I've noticed that it's gotten faster.
Oh yeah.
My speed of change, there for a really long time, I feel like I was dragging every single day, like just to get by to the next day. And then all of a sudden, I had this really big shift, and it literally caught me on the floor, just to be honest with you. And whenever I started going through some of these things, and I was like, God, what do you want from me? And I want you to tell me what you want from me. I don't want what I want. I want what you want me to have. And so it was one of those things where I just prayed and I prayed and I cried and I cried. And God is getting me through this right now because I haven't cried yet. But
Yeah.
it's been a huge, huge testimony for me, to be able to go from living an everyday life in anxiety and depression and fear to I'm at peace, I'm at calm,
Yeah.
I'm stable. Like all these things, my mind is clear. Like I'm ready to move forward. And you know, and that's it's easy for me to say it, but it's still hard for me to see it.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that just trusting in what God wants you to do for him and just letting him lead you instead of pushing things
Yeah.
before it's time. And so I've really been in that season of waiting. Brittany, it's time to wait for a little bit. Just sit back and wait.
Yeah.
And it's really helped me, honestly. You know, and you know, it's just really helped me to sit back and wait and watch to see what happens and see where God moves me. Um, and so, yeah.
Yeah. And so to your point at the beginning here, right? You're saying that coaching is helping you. It's almost like Mary and Elizabeth, right? When you encounter like your call, it makes the baby leap, right? Where you're like, oh yeah, like this is my person. This is this thing that I'm called to. This is getting me excited about my future. This is something that I can actually believe is possible for me. And I can start to see myself in so much so that you're having sleepless nights in a good way. Right, where you're like being woken up to like dream with God, like that is phenomenal, right? So I think every time that you think about coaching, if anything, it's giving you an example of what's possible for you. It's giving you permission, if I'm hearing you. Is that what's happening?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And those sleepless nights have been very hard for me at the same time because there's been nights where I woke up, I've just cried
Yeah.
because I felt like I just needed to release.
Yeah.
Um, those nights where I'm up because I'm wanting to know the colors of what my business is going to be. Um, so, and like this past week, it was about changing my vision. I was up Wednesday night all night because I needed to write a new vision because my vision had completely changed.
Yeah.
I'd found my old vision and then I was reading through it and I was like, this is not it.
Yeah.
Like, Brittany, this isn't it. You need to go write it now. And so it was like one of those things where it hit me. And then on Thursday night, the same week, it hit me before I left to go on my trip this past week. And it was, Brittany, what do you want your symbol to be for your business? What do you want it to be with those colors? What is your name of your business?
Yeah.
It just went into all these things that like unimaginable, but it all woke me up in my sleep.
Yeah.
It's like, Brittany, God's telling you to get up right now and go right.
Yeah.
So I would get up and I would come to the computer and I would write.
Mm-hmm.
So none of this has happened during the day. It's always been at night.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a reason behind that. And
God often encounters us when we're still. Not always,
again,
but
and
like,
that's
but when we're still and when we're quiet enough to hear, right? Like that's when usually he
mhm,
can get in. So when you think about your life right now and when you're the most available, that probably is it.
right. Yeah. So again, it's just in that waiting period. I think I haven't been pushing anything along. It's just coming to me. And I've just been in this state of you feel different. And I don't really even know how to describe it. You just feel so different that other people notice the difference.
They for sure do.
And so, whenever, if I were to take this back years ago, I would probably be one that wouldn't be sitting right here, right now, where I'm at. Um, I would shy behind the camera. But, now it's my time.
Yeah.
So it's happening and it's happening faster than I could expect it to. But at the same time, I think it's all great.
Yeah. And it's all God, right? And I think with what you're saying, I love that you said this so beautifully, right? You're not forcing this stuff. You're not pushing this stuff. It's all just coming to you. And the wait is actually active. Like you've been learning that the waiting is actually preparation, right? You're able to see, okay, like what God is doing is going to be inevitable, especially when you're partnering with Him. It's happening. So, like, what are you doing right now to close your faith gap or to actually be ready for when it happens? Like, when you know that that vision that He's dropping in your spirit is a real vision straight from Him, right? That thing is happening and you need to run with endurance after it so you can be ready to actually have that capacity to steward it well, right? So you're
Mhm.
already in preparation. How do I refine my schedule? How do I make sure that I'm keeping myself a priority and taking care of my home? Because if this is something that's going to take me away from it, I'm not ready, because my home is always my first ministry and I have to be able to operate in a very healthy and whole way in order to serve and minister to other people. That's not just going to happen. Like it would be a disservice if I'm really doing it from a broken place, right? The world might call that a wounded healer. No, like you need to go through a full healing and a full shifting with God before you can go out there and start pouring out like crazy. It just doesn't make sense because God doesn't want you to be empty and overwhelmed. Like He doesn't want you in this hustle culture. He doesn't want you in this 10x culture. Like He does the 10xing. He does the heavy lifting. Like that's not on you actually. Like He wants you in faith. He wants you in dependency and He wants you in trust, right? And when you do that, you can actually rest as you build and as you move. And it's a really beautiful thing. So, what is God doing? Like, what can you sense that He's doing? Or what are you excited about, most excited about what He's doing?
So I want to say this because I want to add this in right here before I really say
Yeah.
like what God is doing. You know, I this I went into this past week and I joined in on the faith to fear or fear
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
faith live, and that was just absolutely brilliant. It was very touching in all sources, and something that really caught my attention from that was when Sean spoke about become instead of being a caterpillar, you have to become a butterfly.
Yeah.
Um, so, it's knowing that you have to grow in different areas of your life to be able to become that beautiful butterfly that God wants you to be.
Yes.
So, there was a season in my life, and it hit me like bricks when he spoke about it, because that portion of my life, I was literally that caterpillar.
Mm,
And I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. And then, like, now, knowing that I'm closer to God, I'm able to understand the Bible better. I'm able to be in an area, in a group, in a community that has really helped me grow. I feel like I'm that butterfly.
yeah.
And so it's like, it's moving from different sections of life and different seasons to get you where you are. So I just wanted to say that really fast.
So good. Well, I have to add to that. So there were two
Yeah.
conferences happening simultaneously, right? It was insane. But they
Yeah.
also, at another one, spoke about a caterpillar too. And the specific statement was that I've never seen a butterfly going back to being a caterpillar. So when you
Amen.
actually transform, there's no going back. So for anybody that has felt, as if, did I really change? Is it really different? Or even considering the option to go back to a relationship, to an old way of being, to an old pattern, a butterfly never goes back to a previous state ever. So I just wanted to add that, like, once you are
Yeah.
transformed, you're transformed, and you keep going with God. He moves you from strength to strength and glory to glory. Like, it gets to get better for you. You're up and you're going higher. This is not a backwards journey, it's forward only. Right?
Yeah.
So good. Love that you shared that.
Yeah. I just had to share that because I was like, that goes along with just what you were just saying. And like, we're talking about all these things. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it just hit me like bricks because, I felt for so long, when he was talking and describing and explaining, it was like, Brittany, you really were that caterpillar. But now you're turning into a butterfly.
Let's
It's
go.
like I'm able to move my life on and open up and spread those wings and go for it. So that was really cool.
So fun. Okay, so
Yeah.
what do you sense God is doing?
So what I sense God is doing right now in my life is he is preparing me for a place that is beyond my control. I
Yeah.
will just say that.
Yeah.
Um, I feel there's a lot coming. Again, I'm in that waiting period of let God bring it to me. Um, but God is moving in lots of things in my life. He's moving in my children. He's moving in my family. He's moving in my home. He's, he's just moving. And there's he's done so much for me, and I'm so thankful, to have a God that we have that can move mountains to where you think mountains couldn't be moved. Um, so being able to, Juliana, and I couldn't thank you enough for stepping in the role you're in to be able to teach us and help us further ourselves in the knowledge of God. So that I think that's a very important thing too to know is, you're in you're in a season in your life yourself, being able to be on stage for the first time at two places.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like one of those things that it's like we're all going through different seasons and different stages, but we can all be happy for each other because we're all in those seasons together. We're all learning, we're all going through the same things at the same time, just we're all going through it differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
There's
I just
always more and more levels in God, right? So I
yeah.
think that's a beautiful thing. I even shared at Fear into Faith Live, right? Like, FOMO is not a thing. That is not a kingdom principle. This fear of missing out is not a thing. However, you can miss out on what God has for you, on these good purposes and plans that He's already laid out, that you might walk in them when you get caught up in former things that He told you to forget, or when you start rehearsing traumas and pains, right? That He has healing for you to be free of those things. Or when you start getting in a idea or a narrative of who you thought you are, and it's nothing even remotely close to what God thinks or says about you, right? So you can miss out on your purpose and on your destiny when you get in these lesser things. Like that is worse than FOMO, in my opinion, right? Like, so the beautiful thing is when you start actually preparing, I think for anyone resisting a waiting season or that's like in it, they're like, you know, like I'm not where I was, but I am where I am. I'm not quite where I know God is showing me. That could be called a waiting season. But I think we've talked about this before, right? Where there's preparing, there's training, where you're literally like absorbing new information and starting to implement it immediately. You're like, where's this been all my life? Like, I've needed this. Like, I've never been trained up in this way. And then you're in the assignment. Okay. So those are really fast phases when you think about it, like healing, growing, evolving, taking care of yourself. That's a preparing season. You don't quite know what you're preparing for. And then God drops you in training and you're like, oh, we're serious now. Right. Which makes sense. Like now that I've prepared and I've started making space for God, now he's giving me what I can receive and increasing my capacity. Right. And then I can run with endurance in my assignment. So it really makes sense. Like right now, I would say you're not waiting, you're actually training because you're going to be deployed, right? Like, so that's literally what's happening, right?
We did. We talked about that.
Yes.
We did talk about that. Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's different when you think about waiting. Like it changes your weight when you know like what your season is. So I love that you said that you're starting to sense these different seasons that God has had you in, because no season is permanent. So if you can just milk your season for all it's worth, right, then you're ready for the next one. So I love to think about that way. And we don't know how long they are. Sometimes they're months, sometimes they follow physical seasons, sometimes they're years. We're not quite sure. Like God controls the time, right? And he operates outside of it. So, you know, we could be like Israelites and add some years to our journey, or we can really trust him and embrace the unique process that he has for us. And he will make sure that we don't miss the gold that he has, and that we're ready for the next and ready for the next and ready for the next. But every next level does require a different level of belief, expectancy, faith, surrender, dependency, vulnerability, integrity, character, fruit. Like you've really got to grow up, right? And that's not something that in the world we like. In the world, we like to be like rebellious and independent and self-sufficient and all the things. You come into the kingdom, you're like, hold up. Like that isn't how God operates at all, actually, right? We're meant to be dependent, not self-sufficient. So it's really, really interesting when you start operating with a totally different operating system, then you also see him show up like never before. And it is wild, and it happens way faster than you think. Way faster than you think.
It happens super fast. And, you know, and I believe that's portion of what I've been experiencing too, is the fastness of the changeovers and, you know, knowing that, you know, I could say, because I'm starting to be able to pursue some of those things that, you know, God has laid before me, where I couldn't see those things. So, you know, just opening my eyes up and not backing out of things. That was something huge for me. Is I would put myself backwards. Like I would get somewhere and then I would just stop. Like it's not for me. But then, you know, this has been something that it's like I got into it. I went a little further. Now I'm going a little further, and I'm like still going. And so it's one of those things that I have not backed out of. So I know that, you know, that's what God wants for me. And so, and not just what I wanted for myself.
Yeah. So I'm really hearing for you. So one, I just want to honor you. I want to honor you for all of the private surrender and the private prayer, right? The private pain that nobody could ever voice or even know that you're walking through, for all of the ways that you just keep trusting, just keep surrendering, just keep sacrificing. That is so incredibly challenging and hard to do. And it's often things that nobody claps for, nobody sees, but it is that private surrender, that private humility, right? That leads to a public promotion, right? But it always happens in the spirit first. I just want to honor your hearts, how well you love people, how much you carry for them, how you fight for them spiritually, in the natural, in so many ways. You are just somebody that shows up, and I just want to honor you for that. And I'm really hearing, right, for you, it's butterfly season. I love that, but I love that means expansion, right? That's really a season where, you know, when you think of your wings fully being out, like you're expanding into new territory, you're expanding into new realms with God, you're expanding into new perspective, you're expanding into new freedom, you're expanding into new identity, like new aspects of like how you've never viewed yourself in your life, that will lead to so much freedom for you, so much wholeness for you. It'll start making sense for you, so much more clarity, so much higher heights, right? When you come up higher, you just see things differently. So just expect that this is expansion season, and God is really going to start blowing your mind by how he shows up for you. I also love how butterflies move. They're very free. They have a lightness of being. And when you picture moving by the wind of the spirit, you're carried. You're carried, like the wind sort of carries you. So that's a very different way to live your life. You're not carrying everybody anymore. God is carrying you in this season. So I just wanted to release that over you, because it's so, so encouraging. It's just an honor to be a part of your
Yeah.
journey. But I want to hear too from you. You knew this was coming, this advice question. Right? So like many, many years from now, right? When you are with Jesus, right? You can't leave your business here. You can't leave anything that you've created here, all of the beauty that you've created here. You can only leave a piece of advice that could change people's lives. What would you tell them?
So, if I could give anyone advice, it would be stop holding back, let it go, go through the season of, if you are in that season of, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to be,
Yeah.
um, let it go. Let it go. I know that's very hard. It's just a very hard thing, but let it go, because on the other side is beauty.
Mm,
Um, it is.
yes.
It's beauty.
Amen.
Yeah.
It's true.
So just pushing through all those times and those hard days and those lonely nights, those, all those days that you sit and you feel like you don't have anything.
Yeah.
Push through that,
Yeah.
because there is definitely beauty on the other side awaiting for you.
Yeah.
Um, and do what it get on your knees. If I could give you anything, get on your knees and start praying and asking God what he wants for you versus what you want in your life,
Amen.
because I promise you it will be very different.
Yes.
What you want in your life is not going to be what God wants for you. It's going to be a very different picture. It's going to be something that, did I ever think that I would be sitting here right now having an interview? Absolutely not. Never in my life would I have ever thought this at this moment in my life. But, it's one of those things I say, push through and know that God is with you and he's not against you.
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not going to be what you think. It's going to be better.
It's going to be better. It is.
Be
It's going to be
better.
much better.
Oh,
And if I had to say anything else, it would be invest in yourself.
yeah.
If you are not investing in yourself, that I think that's been one of the biggest things for me, has just the investment into myself of, going on the path that, God is leading me on. But you have to invest first, I believe.
Yeah. You gotta, I like to say it this way, you gotta sow where you want to go.
Yeah,
Right.
there you go. So,
Yeah, so where you want to go. Like I've definitely lived by that principle, right? Like being somebody too that wasn't trained up in the way she was wanted to go, that wasn't covered, that wasn't protected, guided, supported. That was what I believed, because that was true in the physical, right? It wasn't true spiritually speaking, because that's not, God is always leading, guiding, supporting, and covering us, right? So but not knowing that, when you actually start seeing other people operating in what you crave, what you desire, when you actually sow into that, you start receiving, right?
mm-hmm.
In spiritual terms, we call that an impartation. The impartation, right, that you desire, when you show honor, that is what you can actually receive, right? So you always want to sow where you want to go. That is so, so important. And you can learn, right? Never think that, you know, you've arrived. I think in the beginning too, especially when I first got into therapy, or, you know, when I was really growing through seasons, that you think, okay, good, phew, I'm done. Right. But it's like, no, you just hit a layer. Right. Like there's like many, many more layers to go, actually. So like keep going. And there's so many, God will always lead you. In my experience, when you just pray like that, it's like, God, lead me to my heavenly helpers, lead me to my mentor, lead me to my teacher, lead me to the next program, the next skills, the next mastery training that you want me to have. Like I've shared with you guys, right? Intimately in the mastermind, sometimes on prayer calls, like I'm already in my next trainings. I'm already in them, right? Because I already know like the next level that I'm going to be pouring out. So I'm already preparing for it now. So I think if you're not growing and investing in yourself, you're going to stay where you are. And for me personally, that's never been enough, right? Like I want to leave the world fully tapped out, right? Knowing that like I literally did everything that God put on my heart to do. That I wasn't like, oh, we'll see. Maybe I'll get to that someday, right? That I literally was running with endurance at whatever he dropped in my heart. And I didn't put him on the back burner, right? So I love that you said that, invest in yourself. You are somebody that demonstrates that. You truly walk your talk in that way, and it's beautiful to see. So how can people connect with you?
So how people can connect with me? I don't know. You're asking me something I don't know.
Instagram, email, however you want them to connect.
Yeah,
Whatever you're
so
comfortable.
yeah, I have Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, email, texting. I mean, I have all the things, I think.
Okay, give them one where you're most like active. So if they wanted to connect with you, they could get you.
Um, I'm most active, well, Instagram and Facebook both. I'm about as active on both.
Okay.
But yeah,
And what's your user profile?
that I have no clue. You'd have to let me look it up.
Like people can't find you if you don't tell them what it is.
Yeah, so let's see. So my Instagram is Brittany underscore Griffith 9812.
Okay.
And then on Facebook, I don't know where I would have that at. Other than you could look up Brittany M. Griffith,
Okay.
and I have a purple background with my picture.
Okay. Perfect. Hey, well, thank you so, so much for being on here, for sharing your journey, for sharing your pearls of wisdom, these golden nuggets that God has given you, your testimony, and all of the lights that you are. It's just been an honor to have you on the podcast. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you, Julianne. I'm grateful for you as well.
You're welcome. All right, everybody, make sure you connect with Brittany and keep your eyes on her for sure.